Have you ever looked at a situation where all the official numbers say things are perfectly fine, but your gut tells you something just feels entirely off?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's that classic sense of cognitive dissonance.
Yeah, exactly. Because, well, if you look at the dates around April 22nd and 23rd of 2026, the financial markets were looking incredibly calm, like unnervingly calm.
Right, because of the diplomatic news.
Right. There's a U.S. presidential extension of an Iran ceasefire that had just been announced,
Hmm.
and the markets just rejoiced. I mean, the S&P 500 and the Nasdaq were hitting record highs. It was this picture of perfect stability.
Yeah, if you were just looking at a stock ticker or your retirement account, you'd think, okay, the world has figured it out. We have peace.
But, and here's the twist, on that exact same day, in that exact same region, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard seized two ships in the Strait of Hormuz.
Two massive commercial ships, yeah.
Right. And the physical markets, the ones dealing with actual barrels of oil,
Yeah.
they reacted violently. Oil prices immediately spiked. WTI, the U.S. benchmark, hit $92.96, and Brent crude hit $101.91.
It's a profound contradiction.
It really is. So, okay, let's unpack this, because our goal for this deep dive isn't just to, summarize the daily news. We want to look at the underlying structures, the invisible operating systems running the world.
Right, the logistics, the cities, the resources.
Exactly. And right now, there's just this intense friction between those systems.
Well, I like to view it as membrane tension. You have these global events happening simultaneously, and they aren't isolated. They're pulling on the same membrane. I mean, we can look at three distinct snapshots from right around that time to really see this.
Okay, what's the first snapshot?
Well, the first is exactly what you just mentioned, Hormuz.
Mm.
The dynamic of a ceasefire on paper versus a physical ship seizure in reality. The financial markets are, they're pricing in relief, but the physical logistics grid is pricing in severe disruption.
Right, the paper versus the physical reality. What's the second event?
The second snapshot is Meta breaking ground on a massive, over $1 billion data center in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Over $1 billion for one facility.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And the third snapshot is happening in the Philippines. The U.S. and the Philippines are building a 4,000-acre industrial hub in New Clark City, which is just north of Manila.
Wait, hold on. I need to push back on this a little bit.
Sure, go ahead.
I mean, a data center is essentially just a giant warehouse full of computers, right?
Right.
And an industrial park is basically commercial real estate. How does any of that connect to oil tankers being seized in the Middle East?
It's a fair question. It connects because of the speed difference between these different layers of our global operating system.
It's a speed difference.
Yeah. So the financial OS moves at the speed of expectations. A ceasefire is announced, and algorithms adjust billions of dollars in milliseconds. It assumes instant adaptation.
Right, the market just instantly decides things are better.
Exactly. But physical reality, the logistics, the ships, the pouring of concrete that moved slowly, it's bound by physics and geography. A ship can't teleport out of Hormuz.
So the stock market is essentially living in the future, while the physical world is stuck dealing with the present blockages.
Right. We are entering a phase of deep asynchrony. Financial stability simply does not match logistical reality right now.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Because if the stock market is ignoring these physical bottlenecks, they must be banking entirely on the digital economy, right? They're looking at AI and thinking software is just going to save us.
That's the dominant sentiment, yeah. But the flaw there is that we treat the digital world like it's weightless, like AI exists in the cloud and doesn't affect the ground.
But the cloud is actually incredibly heavy.
Extremely heavy. AI investment is no longer just, corporate spending on software. It is becoming a massive urban event.
An urban event? What do you mean by that?
Yeah. Well, think about that Meta project in Tulsa, or look at SK Hynix. They recently committed 19 trillion Mealer, which is roughly 12.85 billion US dollars, for a new advanced AI memory packaging plant in South Korea.
$12.85 billion. That's not just a factory.
No, it fundamentally alters the city it's placed in.
It reminds me of, think about when you try to run a really cutting-edge, graphically intense app on a slightly older smartphone.
Right, I know exactly what you mean.
The software is brilliant, it does amazing things, but it drains the battery in 10 minutes, and the physical phone gets too hot to even hold. It feels like our cities are that smartphone right now.
That is a perfect analogy because AI data centers are hitting hard physical limits. They are hitting power grid limits, they're hitting community acceptance limits, and crucially, they are hitting water constraints.
Water constraints for the cooling systems, right?
Exactly. You need millions of gallons of water to keep these servers from melting down, so you're taking a hyper-advanced software system and plugging it into civic infrastructure that was built decades ago. It just consumes the city's capacity.
Which completely changes how we need to think about global power. I mean, we usually think of geopolitics as nation-states arguing over borders.
Right, the US versus China or the EU passing regulations.
But if these data centers and supply chains are this resource-heavy, then the supply chains are breaking down from that national level and embedding directly into specific cities.
Yes, the city itself is becoming a geopolitical node, a hub for manufacturing, security, and data all at once. And you see this clearly with the new Clark City Industrial Hub we mentioned.
The 4,000-acre one in the Philippines.
Exactly. That hub connects to broader frameworks. Have you heard of the Luzon Economic Corridor?
I have, yeah. It's part of that broader shift analysts are calling Pax Silica, right?
Yes, Pax Silica. It's this idea of a security and economic architecture built entirely around semiconductor supply chains. Silicon, essentially.
So instead of a military alliance between capitals, the alliance is poured into the concrete of these specific regional corridors.
Right. It's a shift from nation-state networks to city and corridor networks.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? If the world is reorganizing around cities and physical resources to feed AI, how does that affect our daily understanding of the economy?
Well, the biggest takeaway is that going forward, price stability will not mean supply stability.
Meaning you might have the money to buy something, the price might be normal, but you just physically can't get it.
Precisely. You might be able to afford the product, but the logistical OS is so tangled that the product simply isn't there because the resources needed to make it are shifting towards state control.
And we are seeing that shift with raw materials right now. There are two somewhat invisible events that highlight this perfectly.
Oh, you're talking about the battery metals.
Yeah. First, look at the Democratic Republic of Congo, the DRC. They produce roughly 70% of the world's cobalt, and they just created a national strategic reserve for it.
Which is a massive move.
It is. And then second, over in Brazil, domestic battery makers are officially requesting government protection, so they aren't wiped out by imports.
Right, so what you're seeing in both cases is the state taking control of the supply valve. The EV and battery supply chains are shifting. It's not just about the free market price of materials anymore.
It's about who literally holds the physical metals.
Exactly. Look at the growing price divergence between COMEX and LME copper right now.
Right, COMEX being the U.S. exchange and the LME being the London Metal Exchange.
Yeah. When those prices diverge significantly, it's a structural warning sign. It tells you that having a paper contract for copper at a certain price doesn't really matter if you can't physically get the copper delivered to build your $12 billion AI plant.
The paper price is separating from the physical reality.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's tie all of this together, the hidden web of it all. Because when you look at the whole map, these events aren't isolated at all.
Not even a little bit.
Let's go back to Hormuz, the shipping disruptions in the Middle East. At first glance, seizing an oil tanker seems completely unrelated to a cobalt mine in Africa or an AI data center in Oklahoma.
But they are directly connected through the chemical refining process.
Right. Walk us through that mechanism.
So to refine raw cobalt down in the DRC into something you can actually use in a battery, you need highly specific chemical solvents. And a huge portion of those petrochemicals are produced in the Middle East.
Oh, wow. So a disruption in the Strait of Hormuz delays the shipping of those exact chemicals to Africa.
Yes. The logistical delay hits the chemical supplies. That constrains the refining of the cobalt in the DRC, which, remember, is now also subject to a state strategic reserve.
The supply tightens even more.
Right, and that shortage ripples out and delays battery and energy storage production in places like Brazil or the Philippines.
And without advanced energy storage, those massive AI data centers in South Korea and Oklahoma can't get the stable power grids they need to operate.
Every single layer touches. The financial markets might be hitting record highs, pricing in peace, but the physical logistics grid is inflamed.
It really is this intense membrane tension. So to summarize our observations today, the world isn't fundamentally breaking, but the connective tissues, the cities, the ports, the resource nodes are quietly being ripped out and replugged into new sockets.
It's a great way to put it. And it leaves us with some really profound unanswered questions.
Like what?
Well, in this new era of asynchrony, what actually defines stability? If a stable price doesn't guarantee you can get the goods, how do we measure economic health?
That's a huge question.
And physically, how much AI infrastructure can our cities actually absorb before the power and water simply run out?
Right, the smartphone battery can only handle so much.
Exactly. And finally, with these growing tensions between the fast financial OS and the slow physical OS, where will the supply chains break next?
It's fascinating, and it makes you view your everyday surroundings completely differently. Actually,
Yep.
I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over today.
It's here.
The next time you go outside, just take a long look around your own city. Look at the power lines, the water reservoirs, the new construction on the edge of town. Is it just a place where you live and work? Or, without you even noticing, is it quietly being rewired into a massive, resource-hungry engine for global geopolitics and AI?
The physical world always has to catch up to the digital one eventually.
It really does. And it's going to take a lot of concrete, water, and copper to get there. So keep an eye on the physical reality, not just the stock ticker.